American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757, was en route from Washington Dulles International Airport to Los Angeles when it was hijacked by 5 Al-Qaeda terrorists. At 8:51 a.m., the plane took off, and just 30 minutes into the flight, the hijackers overpowered the flight crew, taking control of the aircraft. Air traffic controllers lost communication with Flight 77 at 8:51 a.m. The plane's transponder was disabled, making it harder for radar operators to track the flight. As the hijackers took control of the cockpit, they altered the plane's course and headed back towards Washington, D.C. Flight 77 flew off course for nearly 40 minutes. By the time it reached Washington, D.C., it was traveling at an incredible speed of over 500 miles per hour. At 9:37 a.m., the plane crashed into the Pentagon's western side, causing a massive explosion and killing everyone on board. The impact of Flight 77 caused a catastrophic fire that would burn for hours. Emergency responders worked tirelessly to rescue survivors, but the damage was severe. 125 people inside the Pentagon, including military personnel and civilians, lost their lives, along with all 64 passengers and crew on board the plane. Investigators immediately began working to uncover the details of what had happened. They first focused on the wreckage at the Pentagon, trying to determine how the hijackers had managed to navigate the plane into the building. Due to the nature of the crash, many of the plane's components, including the black box, were severely damaged. Despite the extensive damage, crucial pieces of evidence were recovered, including parts of the plane's fuselage and flight data recorders. Investigators worked closely with military personnel to analyze the wreckage, track the flight path, and piece together the final moments of Flight 77. The investigation revealed that the hijackers had specifically targeted the Pentagon, the heart of the U.S. military. The precision with which the plane was flown, particularly at high speed and low altitude, suggested a level of skill that was previously underestimated. It was clear that this was no random act. It was a deliberate, coordinated attack on a symbol of American power. Before 9/11, aviation security was far less stringent. Passengers could carry small knives, box cutters, and other items that would now be prohibited. The hijackers of Flight 77, along with the others, exploited these weaknesses to gain control of the aircraft. Using small weapons like box cutters, the terrorists were able to overpower the flight attendants and pilots on Flight 77. This was a tactic that, up until that moment, hadn't been considered a serious security threat. After the 9/11 attacks, the U.S. government completely overhauled aviation security. The Transportation Security Administration, or TSA, was created, and airport screening procedures were drastically tightened. Restrictions on liquids, shoes, and even laptops were introduced, and cockpit doors were reinforced to prevent future hijackings. Federal air marshals were placed on more flights, and flight crews underwent extensive training to handle potential hijacking situations. The changes weren't just physical, they were psychological. Airlines and passengers alike now knew that the threat of hijacking was no longer theoretical. The tragic events of 9/11 led to profound changes in how the world approaches aviation security, but they also brought with them deep pain and loss. The attacks resulted in a global movement to combat terrorism and secure our skies. Flight 77's crash into the Pentagon was not just an attack on a building, it was an attack on the lives of those within it. The legacy of that day is not just found in the policies that followed, but in the courage and resilience of the survivors and the families who lost loved ones. Though we can never forget the tragedy of September 11th, the changes in aviation security that followed ensure that the lessons learned that day will continue to protect future generations. We honor the victims, the heroes, and the families affected by this devastating attack every time we board a flight, knowing that the skies are safer because of them.